Now, my next guest has written a book to help everyone better understand each of the three key stages of a woman's life. So, welcome to the program to Dr. Nigat Arif. Good evening, Dr. Arif. How are you?
Good evening. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So, the book is called The Knowledge and nothing to do with taxis.
No, nothing to do with knowledge, the taxis, although it is the knowledge that you need about women. And it's literally what it says on the tin. So the cover is the knowledge, everything you need to know about female health from menstruation to menopause. And that's it. It's a life journey of a woman, really.
Three key stages. What are those key stages?
So what I did with the book is I'm an NHS GP and I've been practicing for 15 years and I get the same issues that come. So I see usually 12, 13-year-olds who start their period, so they've just hit puberty. And then I see them again around the time of their fertility years. So that's when they're around their 20s. And then I probably will see them again when they're hitting perimenopause in their 40s. So the chapters are divided into the puberty years, the fertility years, and the midlife years.
It makes sense. So up until puberty, then, are we to say that there's nothing special or particular to consider in terms of the development of a woman?
No, the development is always vital. I mean, from the moment I would say at conception, it's really important to understand what the female embryo is doing. We know that women are born with a certain number of eggs. We know that estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone hormone is vitally important. But what this is a practical guide of when women will start having contact with their NHS GP or girls will start having contact with their NHS GP. So their development at home is absolutely fine. We'll still be treating them if there's any issues. But when it comes to women's health, we normally say the biology kicks in and your brain goes, okay, now she's hit puberty. And that's when your lining of the womb comes away and you start your periods. That's usually when mums and dads will go, okay, I need some advice. And also to pick up when something isn't going right.
And arguably, if you can make, and I know, why should we make a comparison with men? But arguably, with men, there are just two key stages in their lives. Do you know what I mean?
Well, men, I think that equally there is a lot of gender bias research. We know that the men are under researched, women are under researched as well. And if we drill down into the actual mechanics of it, we know Black and Asian communities are even far less researched as well. But men, we know that they don't get cycles. So their biology is such that they don't have cyclical changes as women and girls do. So we know that as men, as they get older, there is something called andropause. So there's a lowering of testosterone, and men equally need to be researched in that area, but there's little knowledge about that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's stick to the content of your book. There, we start with the puberty years. What do we know, or what do we need to know about women's health at that time?
Oh, it's a really amazing time. It's actually a really crazy time as well. And I don't know if you've got children at all, but I see a lot of young girls. I've got two nieces. I have three boys. And usually when the hormones are fluctuating, your body goes through a lot of changes. The biggest change that happens is obviously apart from breast development and hip development and also the fat deposit. So your body shape changes as a woman or as a young girl. Actually your cycles start. So the key thing about puberty is your periods will be starting. But it's the stigma around that. For example, growing up in a Pakistani household, the conversation around your period starting was something that actually I never even had. I started bleeding and my mother just handed me some sanitary towels and said, this is it. And I just thought, oh my goodness, what do I do with them? And it was only when I was about 14, 15 that I realized that there were sanitary towels with wings on them. And what's normal? What is a heavy period? What is a light period? What is pain? So the concept of pain is something that I'm really conscious that we need to be able to communicate that with our younger audiences, so our 12, 13, 14-year-olds, because historically pain is something that women should just endure and put up with. And I have so many conversations with young girls who say, oh yeah, it's completely normal that I have a day off from school, and it's absolutely something that is occurring on a cyclical basis, but that's not normal. And then if you look at, again, when the research, when it comes to Black and Asian communities, again, that concept of pain is make no fuss, don't make any fuss about it. We're not going to see the doctor. And it's, again, hidden. In my Pakistani culture, when it comes to a girl starting her cycles, it's actually seen as a time of, in some communities, that should be hidden, or something called under the veil. And in Punjabi, we say parde ke niche rakhna. And that means that when there are issues, they're not communicated and help isn't sought earlier. So in the puberty years, I tackle all of that, and advice for dads as well. What can you do if your daughter is now going into her puberty years and starting her cycles? What about pads? What about period products that might be out there? So there's lots of nuggets of information in the book.
Well, and thank you for asking. I have two daughters who are now in their early 20s. However, I do remember that period very, very clearly. And I wouldn't give any advice out to dads because I'm not qualified. But it's not that we had the same, our generation, as you could imagine, probably closer to your generation than your parents' generation. But our generation are more open now to talk about these things. However, for some reason, if your daughters don't want to talk to you about it, then thankfully they talk to their mothers about it. So I was kept out of the loop, and I had to introduce myself into the loop, in a very sort of surreptitious way. I don't even know if my daughters...
How did that happen?
Well,
how did that happen for you, though? Because as a father of two daughters...
Yeah.
How did that conversation start?
It's a very good question. Well, we used to go jogging, at that point where you're still trying to be like a good father and all that. We used to go jogging together. So we were jogging, and one of my daughters said, she had an itch in her stomach. And I said, oh, is that your period? That was the first time that conversation had ever been discussed between me and them.
What was her reaction?
They said, no, it's not. And carried on. I was like, okay, that's the end
but
of
that's
that.
So lovely. Isn't that lovely?
At least they knew that I was aware. I wasn't totally ignorant. But I did feel a bit left out of that period. The period that you can't...
Do you know what?
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
That's okay.
But,
no,
what you highlighted there is so typical, I think, of so many dads' experiences, that they feel left out. But imagine if you're sort of a widowed dad or a single dad, and now we have lots of same-sex couples as well. So in my book, In the Knowledge, I really wanted to have that of like in conversations that you can have as a start of. I'm in a house with 3 boys and my husband. And my children do see sanitary products in around the house. And my 5-year-old saw, I think, one of my tampons and asked me. And I said, oh, this is something that as a woman, we have a bleed every month, but it's nothing to be worried about. It's nothing serious. It's just when the lining of the womb comes away. And even at the age of 5, he just sort of looked at me and just went, oh, okay, and went on. But I think it's like breaking that taboo. And that is still uncommon, but we need to be having those conversations openly without stigma. So I'm so proud of you of starting that conversation, because actually at some point, your daughter will bring up and have the courage to come and see you, especially later on down the line, if they decide to want to have children. I still find that in my community particularly, and this is what I cover in the book as well, women hide their pregnancies from even their parents, their father particularly, right until the baby is born. It's like, ta-da, the baby is here. And I think that sort of perpetuates where things can get missed and advice can't be sought, and again perpetuates that area of stigma and shame in certain communities.
Yeah, that second period of a woman's health, the fertility years, as you describe it, that often is the one that, the dad rolls up his sleeves, goes and gets a shotgun and sits by the front door waiting for the next boy that comes along to knock on his door or whatever. But that part we necessarily have to be engaged with. But having said that, it is for us to engage in if we're brought into the conversation. I'm speaking as a dad here, but obviously as a mother it would be something else.
Absolutely. And women talk to women, right? And it all comes back to how much knowledge the woman has already to start with. And regardless of a level of education, we know that anybody in the house will still go to the woman, even though she's not even the expert or knows anything about health, whatever. But it's because they're having those life cycles anyway. But actually, men being part of that conversation is so important. As a father, you love and adore your babies, but they're growing up and they are going to have children and they're going to have relationships as well. But their cycles and any gynecological problems are going to be also impacting on their activities of daily living. So in the fertility years of my book, I talk about what are the signs or symptoms of adenomyosis, which is so unknown or unheard of. What are fibroids like? So we know in the Black community, women are more likely to get fibroids and get really heavy periods. But what are the signs and symptoms? So women aren't sitting at home putting up with these heavy periods that they're experiencing. What is endometriosis? What is polycystic ovarian syndrome? So I go through all the medical conditions that can impact your fertility, but also to make women in that chapter understand that, 1 in 7 couples in the UK are infertile. So be prepared and be understanding of what it's like while life is happening around you. What tends to happen is that, unfortunately, the way the system is in the NHS, and women end up finding that either they are dismissed, which I'm hoping to empower a lot of my readers with my book to say, look, you know your body the best, and I'm telling you as an NHS GP. And then secondly, empowering them to make choices so that they know that if they decide to have children, what are their options? If they decide not to have children, what are their options? What are the contraceptive options? I mean, we only think about the pill, but there's about 8, 9 different options out there. And then if you wanted to have those conversations with your nearest and dearest and your loved ones, how can you be part of that? So my book is actually very much geared for dads as well, because I think you'll really like it. I hope you like it, because
Well,
it's fully illustrated as well.
I
So
suspect that the key stage of a woman's life that will be intriguing or fascinating to a lot of my listeners, I'm talking about age group wise, is the perimenopausal years. Does that go on forever?
So it's really important to distinguish the different stages of the midlife. So we know, again, that women around the age of 40, but we again know in Black and Asian groups, it might be slightly earlier, 2 years earlier. And that was done because of the SWAN study that showed that Black and Asian communities, again, far, far under research, but women around the age of 39 start going through perimenopause. And that is when you have periods but have menopausal symptoms. And that can be hot flushes, night sweats, and that could be irritability, that could be vaginal dryness, your periods are becoming irregular. But then you'll get to 1 year, and that's the average age of that is about 52 when you are in the menopause. That's 1 year without periods. And then post-menopause, so that's no periods for 1 year, 1 day, and you're post-menopausal for the rest of your life. And so you asked that question, are you in it for the rest of your life in perimenopause? And no, perimenopause is about 10 years, but definitely you're right. Post-menopause, so when a woman's periods completely stop, that will happen for the rest of her life. And the menopausal symptoms that come with that will affect her, and it varies from every woman to woman, and it varies about how severely she's impacted and whether she wants to do lifestyle, holistic things, or whether she wants to consider hormone replacement therapy, HRT.
So the book's called The Knowledge by my guest, Dr. Nighat Arif. Thank you very much, Dr. Arif.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's available everywhere if you want to find
Well,
me.
of
I'm on
course it
social
is.
media.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
But if your listeners want to find out lots about my work, because I do TikToks in different languages about women's health in Punjabi and Urdu and English,
Yeah.
but it's at Dr. Nighat Arif.
I,
So